Welcome back to another video where today I'm going to be showing you how to replace the front brakes on a 2018 Honda CR-V. So replacing the front brakes on a Honda CR-V is pretty simple. What we're going to do is chock our back wheels so the vehicle can't move. We're going to open up the hood and release the pressure in the braking system by opening up the brake reservoir. And then we're going to remove the front wheels. So let's go outside and I'll show you how to do that. So we're going to use our rubber wheel chocks to block the back wheels right now. So the hood release on the Honda is located right here. So in the middle of the hood, above the emblem, there is a little trigger here. You're going to move to the right and you can open up the hood. We'll grab the hood prop here and position it in the front of the hood. And the final thing we're going to do is just open up the brake fluid here. So we're just going to release pressure and I'm just going to flip that upside down. So now that I've got the vehicle jacked up here, we're just going to pop off the lug nuts. It is a 19 millimeter. And we're just going to pull these aside. So now that we've got the wheel off, we're ready to take apart the brakes. So you're going to need two sockets for this. You're going to need a 14 millimeter for these two bolts here. And then there's two additional bolts that hold the bracket on. And that is going to be a 19 millimeter, which is going to fit the two bolts back here. So we're going to start by using the 14 and we're going to open up the two bolts here on the slider. So we're now going to loosen off the bottom one here too. And we're going to pull out the two bolts that hold the slider together. So now that we have the top two bolts out, I'm just going to pull off the caliper here. So you can use a flat bar, screwdriver, something along those lines to help you break that free. And we're going to hang this now with a bungee cord. So now that we have the caliper tucked away, we're going to use our 19 and we're going to get the two mounting bolts that hold the bracket in. So now that we have the bracket and the caliper off, we're going to remove the rotor. So Honda and Acura are one of the brands that have a locking screw here. So there's a specialty tool you use. That will allow you to remove this screw. So you want to be careful and not use a screwdriver on this, because what will happen is this is a very light aluminum. You'll end up stripping the threads if you're not using this tool, which is spring loaded, which forces the screw out. Because if you do strip the threads here, then you have to drill this out. So now that we've got the mounting screw out, we're going to take off the rotor here. And the next thing we're going to do now is we're going to clean up all the mounting surfaces. So we're going to clean all this up and use an anti-seize on here so we don't have the rotor stick down to it. Same with the mounting points here for the bracket. So I always start off with just a wire brush just to get off any bulk, corrosion, or rust. So now we're going to use an angle grinder with a cleaning wheel, and we're just going to clean up the mounting surfaces here till we're clearing. So now that we've cleaned off the mounting surface, we're going to use a little bit of the anti-seize we have here. So this is just going to stop the rotor from getting stuck to the hub. So if you go to service these brakes down the road, you'll be able to get it all off. So you don't want to put a ton on, but just enough to make sure you don't run into any issues down the road. So now that we have the rotor installed, we're going to use the mounting screw just to lock it in place here. So one benefit of this locking screw that Honda and Acura use is you don't need to use a bolt and the lug nut to hold the rotor tight when you go to put the caliper back on. This holds it in position for you. So the next thing we're going to do now is get the pads here removed and get the bracket all cleaned up. So these brakes definitely needed to be done. We pretty much were on the bottom of them right now. So we've taken off the pad mounting clips and the pads, and we've just kind of cleaned everything up here. So again, I'm just going to run the wire wheel now on the mounting surfaces here. So we've cleaned up the pad mounting bracket, and we've got the new pad clips in here. So let's get the brake pads installed now. So I like to pre-install my pads into my bracket here if I can. It makes it just a bit easier to get everything put back together. So the next thing we need to do is compress the piston back in on the caliper. So when it comes to compressing the piston here, you have a ton of different options. There's tools you can use. You can just C-clamp in an old brake pad. But what I tend to do is just get a large set of channel locks here, and I just do it by hand. When you have the brake fluid cap open, you're relieving the pressure there. So that allows you to be able to compress this relatively easy. So the last thing we're going to do before we put the bracket back on is just check these sliders. So they look like they're moving relatively decent, but what we're going to do is just pop them out and just add a little bit of grease. We're going to clean off any dirt that's inside of there. So we're just going to pull back the rubber seal here, and we're just going to pop that out and just give that a quick clean, and then add just a little bit more grease back onto it. So now that we've got everything greased and lubed, we're going to get it all put back together here. So now that we have the pads on, we're ready to resecure the caliper. And we have our first side done, so we're going to move over to the passenger side now. So now that we're ready to start our passenger side, we're going to get the tire pulled off here too. So this is the exact same process as the other side. We are using the 14 millimeter as well as the 19 millimeter. So let's get these top two bolts out. So with the two bolts for the caliper removed, we're able to remove our caliper here again. So this one actually is coming off pretty easy, so I don't need to use that bar that I had on the other side. We're going to do the same thing. We're just going to hang the caliper up for now. Just so it's out of the way. We're going to switch over to remove those bottom two bolts now. So we're now able to remove our bracket again. So we're going to use that same tool again to get this screw out of here. So again, if you do not have this tool, it'll be extremely hard for you to try to get this out without damaging it, and then you would have to drill this out. So we're going to do the exact same thing like we did on the last side. We're just going to clean up all the surface rust here on all the mounting points, and again add the anti-seize so they can be serviced in the future and have no issue getting these rotors back off. So now that we've got the hub cleaned and anti-seize installed, we're just going to install the rotor again. And we're going to do the exact same process like the last side of cleaning up the pad bracket here. All right, so we've got both sides done and installed. So what we're going to do now is go back under the hood, close the brake reservoir cap, and then we're going to go back inside the vehicle. We're going to pump the brakes just to make sure the pistons and the calipers recompress down fully for us. We're going to install our tires and take it for a test drive. So you'll find when you press down on the brakes, it's going to be pretty soft. You'll want to go until it's hard. I do this before the vehicle started. That's just making sure the pistons have recompressed back for you, so you have pads right away when you start the vehicle. So we've got the vehicle back down on the ground. I'm just going to torque the wheels here. So we're back after our road test and the front brakes are working good. So if you have any questions about this process, leave me a comment, like, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.